continued to work. I was going to work every day. My kids were going to school, and we were basically living out of my car.
There is not a single community in our country where a person working minimum wage can afford a place to live with just one job.
Having affordable housing through Ability Housing just afforded me the opportunity to focus on other things in life, to focus on my children's education, to focus on my professional development without having to be stressed out about if I can sustain the housing that I'm in. That's the breath of fresh air that affordable housing gives you. You know that your housing is stable.
Seeing kids move into a new place. It's absolutely the best. When a family gets to move in and you see the look on their face when they open the door and realize this is my home, and especially the look of relief on the parents' face when they realize my children will have a safe place to live.
Residents of affordable housing are people that you engage with on a daily basis. Whether you really know it or not, you are a part of the solution. If you're investing in affordable housing, you are investing in your community and the people that live in your community, because everyone should have a home.
Good morning, everyone. Today is a great day. And I'm going to tell you why it's a great day. Number one, it's Friday. That's cool. Number two, we're coming into the weekend. That's super cool. And number three, this presentation is going to be sunshine for you. I'm going to tell you that right now. It doesn't take much for us to turn on the news and hear things, and we can feel kind of down about negative things happening. But what lifts me up is when I know people are out there working hard, sacrificing, and serving to make an impact where people need help. And that's what we're going to talk about now for the next few minutes. It's going to be very, very cool. So real quick, I want to say something about me before I introduce our two super cool guest, and that is I am a pastor's son, and so one thing about my childhood is I grew up living in parsonages, and parsonages are homes that are owned by the church, and so you move around in these different parsonages. Now, as you might imagine, living in a house owned by the church had some unique challenges. My sister always likes to point out there was one house we lived in that the bathroom, one of the bathrooms, was in the kitchen. I mean, toilet, open the door, you're in a kitchen. So that was weird. And then you would also have things where you'd have furniture that didn't match because it was from different eras, like a 1970 furniture with a 1990 furniture kind of a thing. And then you had houses that were added on to, so like doors would bang into each other, things like that. And then there were things that actually were really challenging, like we'd have bug issues that would go on for months. We had times where we had no air conditioning. And there were also times we were in some neighborhoods that were pretty scary. And I can remember as a kid looking outside my window and watching domestic violence, watching it happen in the neighborhood. There were neighborhoods we were in that it wasn't safe to walk around the block in the middle of the day. So those memories really impacted me. And while we always had a home in the sense of who we were, the housing situation I grew up in my childhood many times was very harsh. And so I have a real heart for housing and knowing that providing that for people. I'm a person of faith, and I think that rudimentary to our faith is really being concerned about people's housing and knowing people have their needs met. So I want you to know that there's a lot of things I have going on in my life, and I try to be very thoughtful about my time and where I invest it. And so I'm investing it today into with these people in this organization because they're really just core to who I am as a person. So I want you to know that. But with that, I want to go ahead. Oh, and real quick, before I introduce our guest, I forgot this. You can comment and you can ask questions. And so like I shared a little something about myself, as we're going through this, you guys can make comments, you can share something about yourself, and then we're gonna have time to be able to answer some questions from you. And by the way, if we don't cover something and you think about this a couple days from now and you want to email me a question, you are welcome to do so. And I promise you, I'll make sure you get the right person and get your answers taken care of. So with that, I want to introduce two people. First, we've got Shannon with Ability Housing here with us. And Shannon, you know, when I think about you, I think about this. I feel like we live in a society today where people seem to think, I tweet, therefore I am. Like somehow if I post things, that is my currency, that's my value to the world, is I say things and they're important. And I don't think that's really a great currency. You, on the other hand, are doing. You have committed your life to make an impact in this area. So Shannon, thank you for being here. I'm so excited about what you do and learning more about it. So thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. That was a very kind intro. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You probably were like, where's he going? And then the other person is my buddy, Mike. And I want to say something real quick about my buddy, Mike. I want people to know. So I am a conservative Republican. Mike is a Democrat. We do join hands in that we both hate Tom Brady. So we have that in common, like all good people. Um, but years ago, I was working, I'm still working on, but I was working this presentation for historically black colleges. And I got asked to do a white paper for President Obama's administration. And I did, and we did a bunch of work, and it was very successful. Well, when President Trump came to office, the Trump administration literally asked me to take that document, like change Obama, put Trump in it, and send it to them. And then they wanted me to come up there and do something. And I was really kind of nervous about it. Like I say, I'm a Republican, but I was with black colleges, and I was scared. I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, how to be received. And so I was with Mike in a meeting, and I just told him what's going on. And Mike looked at me. He said, John, if you get that invitation, I'll come with you. We'll go together. And that meant so much to my heart. Here's my Democratic friend who's just wanting to hold my hand and will help me get through this. And it didn't ever happen, and that's okay. But I always knew Mike, my Democratic buddy, would have gone to the White House with me and helped me with that. That's the kind of guy Mike is. So Mike, thanks for being here. And you're on vacation too. Yeah. You're with us. So thank you.
Thanks for having us on, John. I really appreciate it. And, in my role at Advent Health as head of government relations, I do a lot of work with the administration on regulation issues in particular. And, my philosophy is I can work with anyone, and if more folks like you and me could get together, I just can't imagine what our country could accomplish. So thanks for your support.
My pleasure. You and I are committed to principles over power, and so we kind of don't care at the end of the day as long as we get to the end zone, and that end zone is a Tom Brady loss. So that's what we have.
Well, I think there's one thing we can all agree on. We all really hate the Patriots. So
that's true. That's true. Okay,
push back on that. Massachusetts native here.
I get it. I know. We joke. So Shannon, now let's really get started. So Shannon, how in the world did you get into this space? You're a successful person and you're working in this housing area. How did you get into this world?
Well, I think like most people, I completely fell into my career. Moved to Florida many years ago when my children were very small and wanted to get connected in the community. So I started volunteering with Habitat for Humanity and quickly fell in love with the mission and the work and was offered a position there and worked at Habitat in various ways, international and locally. And then this opportunity arose. And basically, they asked if I would be interested in taking a small housing program at a services organization and turning it into a standalone nonprofit. I knew nothing about disabilities, supportive housing, homelessness, rental housing, but it was a great challenge and it has been one heck of a ride and I've loved every minute of it.
That's awesome. It's so great to see people combining their passion, their gifting, and their purpose kind of all together. That always happened for people, and you're doing that. So cool. So why Central Florida? Because I can see behind you, you're in some sort of jungle somewhere, but you're wanting now to come to Central Florida. So what's up with that?
Yeah, so we're based out of Jacksonville, but about 4 years ago or so, we were actually approached by the Commission on Homelessness in Central Florida because they were really trying to address homelessness in the community. And they were advised that the housing we provide is the solution to homelessness. And so they came, met with my board and asked us to expand. And we were really lucky that JP Morgan Chase gave us a very nice grant to fund our expansion. And it has been wonderful and we have loved every minute of it.
That is awesome. This is a true story. I have a friend, and he meant this as a joke, but he said this to me one time. He goes, John, Jesus said, the poor will always be with us. So I figure, why bother? And so that's the silly, jokey thing to say. But what I mean when I say that is like when we think about crisis, like housing crisis, like I think sometimes people can be overwhelmed by that phrasing, right? Like, because you hear it all the time. Mike and I have talked about that. At Scott Maxwell wrote about the paper. So you see housing crisis, and you just think this is negative and terrible. Ergo, maybe it's just we just don't do anything because it's so overwhelming. We can't do anything. So tell me, when you hear this housing crisis, like what does that mean to you?
For me, it means we've had a systems failure. Wages just have not kept up with the rate of housing cost increases. Harvard has done several studies showing, renter median wages since 1960, about 5% increase, housing 60-something% increase. It's just not sustainable. And it can seem overwhelming. I get it. But on the other hand, doing nothing is not going to solve the problem. And I think it's important to remember, we didn't always have an affordable housing crisis. We didn't always have communities that always had homeless people. Long-term, people had housing crises, things went wrong. We had challenges, but we did not have people who were languishing in homelessness for years and years because they could not find a place they could afford to live. Things just changed, and we have to get back to investing in the things that are foundational to our community and to each of us as individuals.
That's a great answer. And it's funny. It's like, it's not like anybody did this intentionally. It's just like it's like a lot of things. It's like population growth and tourism growth, right? And some of those things are good. But when I hear you say that, what I think is like, if the average person in Central Florida goes to high school and then goes to college and then they get a job in what we think is very typical jobs right out of college, and if that average wage is not one that matches up with expenses, that's what we're talking about. And then you throw in somebody having a kid or somebody having a health issue or somebody having a family member with a health issue, and then it can kind of go crazy. And there's a lot of well-meaning, well-intentioned people that can end up being in a place that they weren't planning to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's never a choice. There's this myth that people wake up one day and decide they're going to leave their nice home and become homeless, and that's not how this works.
Right.
Most of it is circumstances outside their control. And ultimately, in the end, it's the housing. They can't find a place. They're working hard, and they cannot find a place they can afford to live. That's the issue.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mike, I want to go over to you because, you're somebody, particularly with your role with Advent Health, I got to imagine that you could kind of be spending your time about any board in Orlando, right? And so I have to think that you must have pulled back and really thought to yourself, what is the most important issues in Orlando? And then saying, what's the organization that is making the biggest impact? So, walk me through that. How did you get from thinking that through that it's a building housing?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I came to Advent Health 6 years ago, we we decided to bring advocacy and government relations together and our community relations team, to bring them together so that we could not only advocate in the halls of Congress and in state capitals, but also in our communities. And what we do every year, every 3 years, as required under the Affordable Care Act, hospitals like mine have to do what's called a community health needs assessment. And what you do is you find what are the needs in the community. Well, what we really decided to do 4 years ago is add in the social determinants of health. So there are issues like hunger, housing, transportation that really impact parts of the community. And so we have adopted a philosophy of whole person health. And so what we wanted to decide is, what can we do to make our communities whole? So with the person, we look at the body, the mind, and the spirit. We're a faith-based organization, largest Protestant faith-based hospital system in the country. And we want to take care of the whole person. Well, we took that philosophy and said, well, how do you take care of the whole community? Because a community has a mind, a community has a body, a community has a spirit. How do you attack those things? And so what we've decided to do is to focus a lot of our attention, our philanthropy, our work on solving those social determinants of health. So for example, hunger. Eatonville has the highest, I don't know if folks are familiar with the little town of Eatonville, 24% of the adults in Eatonville have type 2 diabetes. They don't have access to a grocery store. They don't have access to fresh fruit and vegetables. How do you attack that? Well, what we did 10 years ago is we built a diabetes clinic there. So we're treating the diabetes, but we're not treating the root cause. So now we're working with them. We prescribe food. We have health classes on how to prepare healthy food. And the diabetes rate in Eatonville has gone down. If you look at housing, you have to approach it with the same kind of mindset. So what we focus on more than anything else are what we call the chronic homeless. Those are folks that have a disability. It could be a mental illness. It could be an addiction. It could be a physical disability that prevents them from working or interacting in society. And they make up the smallest percentage of the homeless, but they consume huge amounts of resources in our jails and our first responders. They chew up a lot of philanthropy, those guys that you give $1 outside your window. So that's who my organization has opted to target, and that's how I got involved in this effort, and how I became connected with Shannon through a project that we worked on with Ability Housing. And Shannon is nothing but persistence, and now I'm on the board and scheduled to be chair next year.
Mike, they're like super persistent, buddy. Like they got me chained here, man. I know. No. Well, it's funny. Persistence. The word I say is passion. And I love it. I love when people are turned on. They see a problem. They're part of the solution, and they're making it happen. Mike. I so love what you do and what Advent Health does, and it reminds me of like how Valencia College built a campus right in the heart of Poinciana. Right. So they did the research of where the highest levels of high school dropout rates, and then they were like going right there. And so that's the same thing. It's like you're saying, hey, where's the problem? And it's like the Good Samaritan. We're going to get off our horse and get right into the side of the road and pick that person up. Like that's the heart of it. I almost wish like Advent Health could have like an Advent Health news channel, which was 24 hours of just, I'm saying like how to help. And so, when I was thinking about this, like, so what can people in the community do to help with these housing issues? In my world, I work a lot with historically Black colleges to provide real estate education. And like, so I'm doing that at a collegiate level, and that's kind of been my bag. What can others do? And how does this connect? How can our community help? What's going on here?
Well, there's a lot you can do. So you can write a check, which is really important. You can get engaged by volunteering. I will tell you that boards like ours, I'm also chairman of the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness, a diversity on the board of not just demographics, but also skills. So having a real estate professional who understands the concept of land values and easy, the best ways to work development issues, that is incredibly valuable to this effort. And then secondly, align your philanthropy with your business strategy. There is nothing wrong with that. We don't build houses. We're not an apartment complex developer. That's why we partnered with Ability Housing. We're a health system, and we know what keeps people healthy. So when we invested $6 million 4 years ago into this effort, what we wanted to do was demonstrate how a concept called permanent supportive housing can help lower other costs. And Shannon, Ability Housing did a similar program in the Jacksonville area, and it shows dramatic success. We're talking jail time for these folks cut by like 75%. The vast majority of them that enter a permanent supportive housing system do not go back onto the street. Instead of the cycle and they don't go to the emergency room. So the cycle that we see in Orange County, for example, with chronic homeless is they're in jail, they get out of jail. When they get out of jail, they no longer get their medications because they're chronically ill, they're mentally ill, some of them, most of them. They're out on the street, they wind up in the emergency room, we treat them in the emergency room, and then we try to put them up in a place until they're healthy. Then they go back into the street, and then they're back into the jail. And the Orange County Jail is the largest mental health provider in 5 counties. They have a staff of 30, they have a full-time psychiatrist, they have a full-time psychologist, and they have 7,500 prescriptions a month. And they are not a mental health provider, they're a jail. And that's why housing is so important, because what they will tell you at that facility at Orange County Jail, they will tell you the number one thing they need to keep people from coming in and out is a permanent supportive housing program. Get those folks into an apartment, let Advent Health provide them wraparound services, which we would freely do, and that will keep them healthy and out of jail and out of the streets and from begging for money, for one thing. The other thing is there are occasions that when you get these folks onto their meds and you monitor them, they can become very productive members of society. We've had folks that have gone through their programs get their GEDs, graduate from community from state college with one has a degree in computer science, another has a degree in automotive. These are folks that, you know, if not for that program, would still be on the street today.
Mike, thanks so much. A lot of great information there. And real quick, Mike, you're coming across a little scratchy. So I don't know if you can make a, like, maybe your AC or something like that. Just a tad bit.
Can you send the air conditioner off?
Yeah. And so go ahead and put it on mute, because I'm going to go ahead and go over to Shannon.
Okay.
But Mike, man, that was so deep and helpful, all those things you're saying, because one of the things you're talking about there is that it's a team effort, right? So just like Ability Housing makes their impact, we also need to keep doing all these other things. And, you know, I've spent a lot of time at 33rd Street Jail as a guest, not a resident, Mike. I was not, but when I've gone there, you know, in addition to, like you were talking about the psychiatric side, there's a psychological side, right? And so having ability to have recovery groups and where people are talking about sort of the emotional side. So that all comes together. Now, Shannon, I want to go back to you, and I want to go a little bit deeper here. Okay. So my friend Carlos, who's a good guy, sent in a comment. He was actually asked about how does all this come together, like in public-private partnerships. So I wanted to talk about, you know, what's your footprint in Central Florida, and if you could also touch on Carlos's question about public-private partnership. Can you take us to a sort of specific level now?
Sure, absolutely. So we are based in Jacksonville, but basically we serve Northeast and Central Florida. We have apartment communities in Orange County. We're constructing one in Osceola, and we're looking for opportunities in all the counties in the Central Florida region. Public-private partnerships is how this is going to be solved. It's not a government issue. It's not a nonprofit issue. It is a community issue. Mm-hmm. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy, housing is the foundation for all of us. If we want a healthy society in every definition of what a healthy society means, we have to give everybody their basic needs. Those have to be met. And that's housing and food security. Those are the things we all need. And the way people can work together, there's multiple levels. So one, for large corporations that have tax liabilities at the federal level, there is a program called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credits. I can sell you tax credits and you can invest in my housing with that resource. It is a wonderful way to offset your tax liability. It is the largest source of affordable housing funding in the country for rental housing is low-income housing tax credits. But also approach everything you do, whatever your business is, when you're looking at something, is there a way affordable housing could be part of this? If you're a health system and you're building a clinic, can you put floors up above and those could be apartments? If you're a church and you have land that's no longer going to be used because you thought you were going to do a school and you're not going to do that anymore, could that be donated to somebody to do affordable housing? Policy-wise, make sure everybody in your local community, all your local officials know affordable housing is really important. Also, your state and federal officials, they have the access to resources and decisions that make housing possible. Some of our housing problems are really market driven. One, we know Central Florida, the housing market in general has not kept up with population growth. So when any market is tighter, it always gets tighter the lower your income is. And that's why part of the reason why we're having such a squeeze on the affordable rental housing. If we can change our zoning and make it possible to do more housing, if we can waive fees, if we can have incentives, there are various things that our elected officials can choose to do. As community members, we should help them make those decisions and encourage them to make those decisions and hold them accountable for making those decisions. And like Mike said, making donations, candidly, Ability Housing is looking for people willing to make an investment in us, like venture capital for a nonprofit, not a gift. We'll give a return on investment. Take some of that money that you have in something that's giving you absolutely no return, invest it in Ability Housing, and we can give it back to you with a nominal return on that, but you also get the social benefit. There are myriads of different things people can do, and anybody who wants to know more, please feel free to reach out to me. I will give you a voluminous number of options in all communities. I know we're talking about Central Florida, but my understanding is we have people from around the state on this, and every community has this issue, and every community has somebody trying to solve this issue.
And I just want to say, as a devout capitalist, you really got me in that ROI comment. That was really powerful. I like that. I do think, in this world, we have limited time, and we all have limited time and limited amount of money and resources. And so thinking through how to make that greatest impact. And, It's interesting, Shannon, there's a TV show I've ever seen. It's called Naked and Afraid, where they take a couple and they strip them naked and throw them out in the woods, and then they got to survive for a series of days. And one of the things I've learned watching that show, first off, is I need to lose some weight. The second thing is watching that show is that, man, 24 hours outside, we all would look terrible, right? So when we see this person on the side of the road and they're panhandling, and we're like, why don't they make a better decision? Well, to kind of like what Mike was kind of alluding to, they're probably dehydrated. They probably have some level of mental health issue and they're not on meds. Like, so if any of us were kind of stripped to a different place, all the decision making becomes bad. When we think about survival, like real survival situations, like if you were in a plane crash in the jungle or something like that, the first thing you would do is provide yourself shelter. Like any survival trained person, it's like shelter is the first thing. Once you have shelter, you go from that. You then go to water and then food, but shelter is first. So it's such the pillar of the things we got to do to address all those other issues. We're going to go to Q&A in just a second. I had a couple of things, but before we do, Mike, I just want to come back to you. Aside from like writing a check, is there other things you're thinking things that people can do?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, you can look to volunteer in the community, serve on a board, bring your expertise to bear. Make sure that you have a voice in these decisions because they do affect the community. I mean, if you don't want to get too biblical on folks here, but in Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 7, the verse is what kind of guides our philosophy is if you look to the prosperity of your community, so you too will prosper. So if any investments that you can make that makes the community stronger will by osmosis make your business stronger. It makes us a better place to live, a more attractive place to live. I mean, look to your business strategy. As Shannon said, it can be an investment, it can be a donation, it can be involvement, but make sure that you have a set of accountabilities. That's what we have at Ability Housing is we have goals, we have measurable outcomes, and if we don't meet those outcomes, to be honest with you, I haven't seen where we haven't met those outcomes, but we have a measurement system for folks to gauge our success. And I can tell you that it's been one of the most successful volunteer opportunities I've ever been involved with.
That's awesome. And, Mike, I want to make this point too, that, a lot of times charities will approach me and they'll say things like, John, we want a relationship with you. John, we want to partner with you. And what that really means is we want to check and we really like you to shut the hell up, kind of thing. And that's not a relationship. That's not a partnership. When we're talking about this organization, just like we talk about Abbott Health, we mentioned Valencia like that, it really is a partnership relationship. And let me give you an example that I would throw out there. So somebody's listening to this and they're like, man, I'm so pumped up. I think this is great, but I'm doing my job and I got to grow my business and I'm kind of freaked out. Like, how do I balance this? Man, if there's a way I can help you with that, let me know. And what does that look like? Look at your list of like prospects of people you're trying to connect to build a relationship with your business. Maybe you got 10, 20 people going after. Well, why don't you and I partner and we'll host a lunch and we'll social distance. We can do it right here at my office and we'll invite your clients and I'll invite some of my clients or whatever. And then we'll have Shannon come over and we'll feed them and then we'll talk about it. And so there's ways that you can absolutely serve and help people in need and grow your own business, right? That's my dream. My dream is that like people involved in this, like a year later, that Ability Housing is doing better. There's more people that are suffering less. And the people that interact with this, their revenues are up too. I unapologetically say that. I want to partner with people in ways like that. So that's really fun.
John, if I would add that if you're in a large organization, we have a process, we have a board placement policy. So we actively look for partners that we want to place executives on their boards. And so if an organization needs legal help and you've got a general counsel, and have them serve on a board. If you've got someone who needs communications help, have your communications person serve on the board. I mean, I understand a lot of folks are much smaller operations, but it doesn't just have to be an expert in real estate or an expert in land development. It can just be a person on your team that has a passion for that issue, and that's what will connect you with the community. And once you get that well connected, you start to feel the pulse of the community and where the issues really are.
Gotcha. I'm going to look here because I'm going to get some questions. Mike, we've had about 17 questions about people that want to vacation with you in your RV. So if we could publish that in a few minutes, that'd be great. But aside from those questions, what other questions do we have?
Well, first of all, Jonathan Moore is saying that he may have access to land he can donate, and that it's being looked at by apartment developers all over the country.
So Jonathan Moore has commented that he's a local real estate guy. He may have some land that he can donate. So how cool is that? That's a pretty nice thing. So shout out to Jonathan Moore. Hugs to you for that. So we'll make sure to get you connected. And that's a good thing. Like, so somebody may know somebody and they may just want to have tax right, donate some land. There's ways to do that. So Jonathan Moore, way to go. What else?
Alex says, doesn't it actually cost communities more to not provide housing?
Ooh, Alex question. He said, doesn't it actually cost communities more money to not provide ability housing or some level of that? And real quick, I had a meeting this week with a pastor, and he's dealing with trying to end like gang violence. And he was like, the cost of shooting at people, how much money that costs. That sounds so cold, but it's kind of the same kind of thing. Like, all these things cost money. So this person's question, if we do nothing, it's more money. Is that right, Shannon?
It absolutely is. Mike talked earlier about the chronically homeless and providing them permanent supportive housing. And we did a state pilot. It is literally 30% less expensive, including the cost of housing and services, to house someone than it was to maintain them as homeless. But it's not just about the homeless. Our students in our public schools, every public school has some student who is homeless or unstably housed and on the brink of homelessness. That affects their performance in school. They frequently have to stay back because they don't pass the tests. That costs us money. That costs that child its future. That costs that family. It is expensive for employers when their employees have to move further and further and further away because they can't afford housing near where they work. Those roads are expensive to maintain. That costs all of us money. Anybody who's driven on I-4 knows we have capacity issues on our streets. We need to have people live where they work. This costs us jobs, where we're definitely now more than ever going to need to recruit businesses. They want to know that their employees will have a place to live and a place to live close to where the job is. So they need housing. It literally costs us both an opportunity loss cost and in straight tax dollars, a lot of money not to address this issue.
Shannon,
the point I would just add on to that is you're already paying for this. You are paying to house the homeless. You're just paying to house them in jails or in emergency rooms, and it's costing you, significantly more money than it would if you had a network of these kinds of housing projects. So we're already paying for it. It really is a matter of where you want to invest that money. And the government will tell you, I had a city council member say, well, look, if we do all this, that doesn't mean taxes are going to go down. Well, A, maybe they should. Those would be a great discussion to have with an elected official. But B, where can they invest that money rather than in the jail? Maybe they can invest it in parks. Maybe they can invest it in education. Maybe they can invest in things that, again, have that ripple effect and improve the community.
There are a lot of concepts out there that we need to evolve. There's better ways to do things. We need to keep pushing ourselves to evolve. Shannon, there are like some really great real estate minds out there asking hard, complicated, mathematical related questions. I'm teasing just a little bit. But Carol Wick sent in a question. She was asking us, are there tax credits out there that can be leveraged somehow when we're doing deals like these?
Yes, there are. The biggest one, again, is the federal low-income housing tax credit. And literally what happens is the IRS gives the state a certain allotment of tax credits that they can then attribute to projects. They sell them to corporations. The corporations, it is a competitive process, and they then become a partner in that real estate project. The internal rate of return on one of our projects for the investor that we did on Mercy Drive was over $5 million. That's their internal rate of return for buying the tax credits. Yes.
That's awesome.
It's a good public-private partnership. P3's work.
Oh man, I said this is going to be a happy, sunshiny call. I'm so happy. That's good stuff. All right, so this question was interesting, and I think it actually relates to a bigger point. But Lewis asked a question about, are you looking for institutional money or REITs? And so it's probably like, how do you invest in stuff? And this is not really a question, but what I was thinking to myself is, we probably could do a better job, Mike. This is maybe a homework assignment for you and me, of like, who are the biggest owners of real estate in our community, right? And so there are a lot of REITs based in other states and other markets that own big projects. And maybe we should ask them if they'd like to make a donation in our community. And also maybe they want to be partners and help in some way. But specifically to you, Shannon, do you have any thoughts about REITs or institutional capital, and how does that connect to what you're doing?
So we haven't actually worked with REITs, but I really would be interested in talking about the possible ways we could partner and again, create win-wins, because those are the most sustainable relationships. Mm-hmm. And then institutional investing, that's what I was talking about. We're really looking to try to create what we're calling an impact investment fund. It would be something where, they make an investment in a fund. We are able to then use that money to build the housing, and they get the money back after a certain period of time with as nominal, I don't want to say below market, because my bank account is not getting me much interest, but there are opportunities. There are definite opportunities, and we really need to work together to even get more creative. I have my list of ideas. I am sure there are people on this call that have way better ideas than I do, and I would love to talk with them, because Central Florida is uniquely positioned to get really creative in solving problems. We're really good at this. And if we all work together and realize each of us has some impact on this, every little kernel of ideas will build and build and build until we create an ecosystem that makes this problem go away.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So one last question, I think then we're going to move into, I'm going to do a little bit of wrap up for us. But the one last question about opportunity zones, that's a big topic. Does what you do, can that be in an opportunity zone? Does that connect at all?
Yes, opportunity zones are an opportunity, that's hence their name, but they really are a way for people to get that return on the investment in the opportunity zone or the opportunity zone fund. Real estate is one of the prime drivers for opportunity zone programs and projects. And so there are real opportunities to work together to leverage those fund investments with other capital and create housing opportunities. Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do a little quick wrap up for us. Is that okay, producer?
Yes.
Good. Okay. I had to check with the boss over here. So thank you both, Shannon and Mike. And, it's funny. It's like, this is a cool thing to go into the weekend with, about reflecting on this with hope and ideas and thoughts. And so people watching this, if they have follow-up questions, they can reach out to me or any of us, and hope to get them engaged. Now, sort of the final thing, so people are thinking, wow, this housing thing's a big deal, and man, Shannon, she seems so smart. So how can they help? That would be the thing. How can people help? So there's 4 things that I wrote down how people would help. One is introducing you to different people in the market, right? So we need to make some connections. And one thing I did, a lot of I work with HBCUs. So every Tuesday I have lunch at the University Club with the Dean of the Family College of Law. And I do that. There's no ask. We just feed people, and we do it just to connect her with key people. And so someone could do the same thing. They maybe they're a member of a club or a citrus club or different country club or something like that. And maybe they might just say, you know what, I'm going to host 3 lunches, and I'm just going to invite some people. There's no ask. But some friends, they get a free meal. Shannon gets a free meal, whoever on your team, and then they come and then just talk. And so that seems like not a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal if somebody just did that, even just did it at one time. The second thing would be is to partner. And to me, what that means is like really sitting down, kind of like what Jonathan Moore was talking about, like he has a friend or a client has land and they can donate. It may be that you're business partners with a construction company and they've got some resources, but it's partner. It's like, hey, Shannon, like here's something we can do for you. And then Shannon can be like, well, what can we do for you back? Like, how can we partner and help grow each other? So that's a big thing. The third thing is invest. I did write a check today. I have a check. Right, I'm going to hand it right here. Boom, right there. Cash it later. No, it's fine.
Thank you very much.
But the point is, it's like, look, I'm not going to ask anyone to do something that I'm not willing to do. So anybody that's watching this, listen to you, I would encourage you to make a donation and invest in ability housing. I am, and I just ask you to partner with me on that. I wouldn't ask you to do something I wouldn't do myself. And then the last thing is just connect to them. And so I think connecting through social media, reaching out to them, and just helping build those relationships is key. So we're going to wrap up. Before we do, Shannon, do you have any just final comments or anything you want to say?
I just can't thank you enough for doing this. One, for your donation. That was very nice. I was not expecting that. Thank you.
Sure.
But also, again, these connections really are very important and helping us spread the word and build partnerships. Thank you very, very much for this. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Shannon. Mike, any final word? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Got to turn your mute off. So my wife always says. Go ahead.
That's the only time I did it, though.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for your involvement, John. I mean, and all the folks on the call for taking the time to do this. It's very important to us. You know, I was born and raised in Orlando. It's the only place I raised my kids here. I'm gonna be buried here. The community is very important, and I really appreciate everything you've done for the community. And again, thank you for everyone to take the time on a Friday to join the call.
Mike, Chan, thanks so much. My final word for everyone would be this. You know, I'm sure there was a period of time in the early 1960s where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. could have just decided to have been the coolest, most popular professor in Boston and just write papers and everyone would love him. But he made a choice. He made a choice to suffer. He chose to sacrifice. He chose to serve, and he changed the world, right? And that's why we revere him in the way we do, because he made that sacrifice. When we look on the news, we in social media, we see these hard problems. We need to get past commenting. We need to get into serving and leaning in. And so if it's not ability housing, man, find some place and just give it a shot and find some place to serve and be hands and feet. You can write checks, you can volunteer, and if you can't do anything else, just encourage the people that are. So Shannon, Mike, thanks for the sunshine that you are and the blessing you are to each and every one of us. Have a wonderful weekend and go whoever's playing the Patriots. I'm kidding. Have a great weekend. Take care, guys.
Thank you very much.